My name is Emma Rodriguez and I'm 29 years old. I work as a financial analyst in Denver, Colorado. 3 weeks ago, I received a text message from my mother that shattered everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. Stay away from the house. I stared at my phone in complete disbelief, my hands trembling as I read those words over and over again. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the same house I'd been paying the utilities, property taxes, and homeowners insurance for the past 18 months. The same house where I'd grown up feeling like a stranger in my own family, always competing for attention with my older brother Marcus, who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Before I tell you what happened next and how I finally found the courage to break free from this toxic cycle, I want to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength when family lets you down. Now, let me take you back to where this all began, because understanding my family dynamics is crucial to understanding why this betrayal cut so deep and why my response shocked everyone, including myself. Growing up as the youngest of two children in our middle-class household in Aurora, Colorado, I learned early that love in the Rodriguez family was conditional and unevenly distributed. My parents, Carlos and Isabella Rodriguez, had established a clear hierarchy from the moment I could understand family dynamics, and I was firmly planted at the bottom. Marcus, 3 years older than me, was the golden child in every sense of the phrase. When he brought home a C+ on his report card, it was celebrated as improvement and worthy of a special dinner at his favorite restaurant. When I brought home straight A's, which happened consistently throughout my academic career, the response was a brief nod and maybe a good job, Mija, before the conversation moved on to more important topics, usually revolving around Marcus and his latest interests. The disparity wasn't subtle. Marcus received a brand new car for his 16th birthday, a gleaming red Honda Civic that he promptly crashed 3 months later. When I turned 16, I was given a lecture about responsibility and the privilege of occasionally borrowing my mother's old sedan, provided I paid for my own gas and insurance. When Marcus decided to drop out of college during his sophomore year to pursue his dream of becoming a professional gamer, my parents supported his decision wholeheartedly. They converted the basement into a gaming setup that cost more than my entire college fund, complete with professional lighting, multiple monitors, and a custom-built PC that Marcus insisted he needed to compete at the highest level. Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs throughout high school to save money for college, knowing that the college fund my parents had mentioned when I was younger had somehow disappeared into Marcus's various ventures and my father's failed business investments. I graduated valedictorian and earned a partial scholarship to the University of Colorado, but still had to take out substantial student loans to cover the remaining costs. The pattern continued through college and into my early career. Marcus's gaming career never materialized into anything profitable, but my parents continued to support him financially while he lived in their basement, playing online games for 12 hours a day and contributing nothing to household expenses. When I graduated with honors and landed my first job as a junior financial analyst, the achievement was overshadowed by Marcus's announcement that he was starting a YouTube channel, which my parents treated as if he'd been accepted to Harvard Business School. By the age of 27, I had worked my way up to a senior analyst position with a respectable salary, my own apartment, and a growing investment portfolio. Marcus, now 30, was still living in the basement, still gaming, and still receiving financial support from our parents who had convinced themselves that he was just one viral video away from internet stardom, the crisis that would eventually lead to my financial entanglement with my parents began 18 months ago when my father's construction business collapsed. A series of bad contracts, clients who refused to pay, and my father's poor financial management had left my parents drowning in debt. They were facing foreclosure on the family home, a modest 3-bedroom ranch that had been in our family for over 15 years. The house itself wasn't particularly valuable, but it held sentimental significance as the place where my grandparents had lived before they passed away 5 years earlier. My grandmother, in particular, had always shown me the love and attention that my parents reserved for Marcus. She used to tell me stories about her own struggles with family favoritism and would slip me $20 bills with a wink, telling me to save for my future because sometimes you have to be your own family, Mija. When my parents tearfully confessed their financial situation during one of our monthly family dinners, I felt a familiar pang of responsibility mixed with hope that maybe, finally, they would see me as valuable, as someone worth appreciating. The monthly payments they needed help with weren't astronomical by my standards, approximately $2,800 for the mortgage, plus utilities, property taxes, and insurance that brought the total to around $3,500 per month. We don't know what we're going to do, my mother sobbed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. We can't lose the house, Emma. This is where your grandmother lived, where all our memories are. My father, usually stoic and proud, looked defeated. We've tried everything. The bank won't work with us anymore. We're 3 months behind, and they're starting foreclosure proceedings. Marcus, surprisingly, was silent during this conversation, focused on his phone and seemingly uninterested in the family crisis unfolding around him. When my mother asked him directly if he could contribute anything, he shrugged and said, "I'm between revenue streams right now. Maybe next month when my sponsorship deal comes through." I knew there was no sponsorship deal. There hadn't been a sponsorship deal in the 2 years since Marcus had started his YouTube channel, which had fewer than 200 subscribers and videos that rarely broke double-digit view counts. "I can help," I heard myself saying, the words tumbling out before I'd fully considered the implications. "I can cover the monthly expenses until you get back on your feet." The relief on my parents' faces was immediate and overwhelming. My mother started crying harder, but these were tears of gratitude. My father actually hugged me, something he hadn't done since I was a small child. "Emma, are you sure?" my mother asked. "That's a lot of money, I'm sure," I replied, feeling a warmth in my chest that I recognized as the approval I'd been seeking my entire life. Family helps family, right? What I didn't anticipate was how completely my gesture would be taken for granted, how quickly my financial contribution would become an expectation rather than a gift, and how my parents would use my reliability as an excuse to continue enabling Marcus's irresponsibility. To afford the $3,500 monthly payment, I had to make significant sacrifices. I moved from my comfortable 1-bedroom apartment to a studio, cutting my rent by $800 per month. I canceled my gym membership, stopped eating out, and gave up the small luxuries that had made my hard work feel worthwhile. I picked up freelance financial consulting work on weekends, analyzing small business books for extra income. The most painful sacrifice was postponing my dream of buying my own home. I had been saving diligently for a down payment and had nearly reached my goal when the family crisis hit. Instead of shopping for my own place, I was now financially tethered to my childhood home, subsidizing the same family dynamics that had made me feel invisible for most of my life. The monthly family dinners continued, and if anything, the dynamics became more pronounced. With my financial contribution keeping the family afloat, I expected some recognition, some acknowledgement of the sacrifice I was making. Instead, the opposite happened. Marcus remained the center of attention, his latest gaming achievements and YouTube plans dominating every conversation, while my work accomplishments were barely acknowledged. "Emma's always been good with money," my mother would say dismissively when relatives asked how they were managing the mortgage. "She's just helping out until we get back on our feet." There was never any discussion of when that might happen. Never any concrete plan for my parents to resume their financial responsibilities. My father had found part-time work, but instead of using that income toward the house expenses, it seemed to disappear into Marcus's various schemes and my parents' refusal to downsize their lifestyle. The resentment began building slowly. My best friend Jessica could see the toll it was taking on me. "Emma, you're basically paying for Marcus to live in that basement playing video games," she pointed out during one of our coffee dates. "When was the last time he even thanked you?" I couldn't remember Marcus ever thanking me. In fact, he seemed to view my financial contribution as confirmation that I was the family workhorse, expected to handle adult responsibilities while he pursued his gaming dreams. My boyfriend Ryan was more direct in his concerns. "They're using you," he said one evening as I stressed over my freelance work, trying to meet a deadline that would help me cover the next month's house payment. "You're working yourself to death to support people who don't appreciate you. They're my family," I replied, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. "Family shouldn't make you feel this small," Ryan responded gently. "You've been happier and more confident since we started dating, but every time you come back from those dinners, you're deflated." He was right, though I wasn't ready to admit it yet. The monthly dinners had become exercises in emotional masochism, 2 hours of listening to my parents praise Marcus's minimal efforts while my substantial sacrifices were treated as background noise. The breaking point came when my parents announced that they were planning a major renovation of the basement to give Marcus a more professional gaming environment. The proposed renovation would cost $15,000, money they didn't have but somehow expected to materialize. "Where exactly is this money coming from?" I asked during the dinner where they unveiled their plans. "We're working on it," my father said vaguely. "Maybe a small loan. A loan you can't qualify for because you couldn't qualify for a mortgage modification," I pointed out. "A loan that would be secured against a house I'm currently paying for." The table fell silent. Marcus looked up from his phone for the first time that evening. "Emma, don't be so negative," my mother chided. "We're trying to help Marcus build his career." "What career?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "He's been doing this for 2 years with nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, I'm working 60 hours a week to keep this house afloat." "Gaming is a legitimate career path," Marcus interjected, speaking directly to me for the first time in months. "You just don't understand because you're stuck in traditional thinking like paying bills and contributing to society." I shot back. The argument that followed was uncomfortable but necessary. For the first time, I vocalized my frustration with the family dynamics, my resentment at being taken for granted, and my exhaustion from carrying everyone else's financial burdens. "You've always been jealous of Marcus," my mother accused. "Even as children, you couldn't stand that he was special." "Special how?" I demanded. "Because he's never had to be responsible for anything? Because he's 30 years old and you still make his bed?" The dinner ended with slammed doors and hurt feelings, but I thought we had reached some kind of understanding. I thought my parents finally saw how unfair the situation had become. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I noticed changes in my parents' behavior. They were having whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Phone calls that were quickly ended when I arrived for dinner. Marcus was spending more time upstairs with them instead of in his basement cave. I began to suspect they were planning something, but I couldn't have imagined the scope of their betrayal. The plan, as I would later learn, had been in motion for months. While I was draining my savings and working myself to exhaustion to keep their house out of foreclosure, my parents were consulting with a real estate attorney about transferring ownership of the house to Marcus. Their reasoning, as twisted as it was, made sense from their perspective. Marcus would never be able to qualify for a mortgage on his own, but if he already owned the house, he wouldn't need to. They could transfer the property to him as a gift, and since I was already making the payments, nothing would really change. Except that Marcus would have an asset he could potentially leverage for his future endeavors. the fact that this plan essentially stole 18 months of my mortgage payments and transferred them to my brother apparently didn't factor into their moral calculations. In their minds, I was successful and stable, while Marcus needed help. The house was just one more way to help him, funded by my financial contributions. The lock change was part of a broader strategy to establish Marcus's ownership of the property. If I had keys and access, it could complicate the legal transfer. Better to cut me off completely and deal with my reaction after the paperwork was finalized. The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning as I was getting ready for work. I had planned to stop by the house that evening to drop off a care package for my mother, who had been complaining about not feeling well. Instead, I found myself staring at my phone, reading words that redefined my understanding of family loyalty. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. Stay away from the house. I called immediately, but no one answered. I tried again and again, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails asking what was happening, what I had done wrong, why they no longer trusted me. It was Jessica who suggested the obvious explanation. "Emma, think about it logically," she said when I called her in tears. "You're paying for their house. Why would they lock you out unless they're planning something that they know you won't like?" The pieces started falling into place. The secretive conversations, Marcus's increased involvement in family discussions, the renovation plans that made no financial sense unless they were thinking long-term about Marcus's future in the house. That evening, I drove by the house despite the warning to stay away. Marcus's car was in the driveway, but so was an unfamiliar sedan. Through the living room window, I could see people I didn't recognize sitting around the dining room table with my parents and Marcus, papers spread between them. I didn't need to see the documents to understand what was happening. My family was quite literally selling me out, transferring ownership of the house I'd been paying for to my brother while I was explicitly banned from the property. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I sat in my car outside their house and laughed, not from humor, but from the sheer absurdity of the situation. I had spent 18 months sacrificing my own financial goals to save their house, and they were repaying me by giving it to Marcus and changing the locks to keep me out. When I got home, I did something I should have done months earlier. I logged into my online banking and canceled the automatic transfer that had been sending $3,500 to my parents' checking account every month for the past 18 months. For the first time in a year and a half, I was going to keep my own money. The confirmation screen asked if I was sure I wanted to cancel the recurring payment. I clicked yes without hesitation. Then I drafted an email to my parents, copying Marcus, informing them that I would no longer be contributing to the household expenses of a property I was not allowed to access and that was apparently being transferred out of their ownership. Anyway, I sent the email and turned off my phone. Whatever their response would be, I wasn't ready to hear it yet. For the first time in 18 months, I slept soundly, knowing that my next paycheck would stay in my own account. The silence lasted exactly 3 days. On Friday evening, my phone began buzzing with missed calls and voicemails. When I finally listened to them, the progression from confusion to panic to anger was almost comical. The first message was from my mother, confused and concerned. "Emma, Mija, the bank called about a missed payment. I think there might be some mistake with your transfer. Can you call me back?" By the third voicemail, my father's voice was strained. "Emma, we need to talk immediately. There's a problem with the mortgage payment, and we don't understand what's happening." Marcus's message was the most telling. "Emma, what kind of game are you playing? You can't just stop paying because you're mad. This affects the whole family." The final voicemail came from my mother, and her tone had shifted from confusion to desperation. "Emma, please call us back. We can work this out. Maybe we can talk about giving you a key again." I waited until Monday to respond, calling my mother back during my lunch break. "Emma," she answered on the first ring. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. I got your messages, I said calmly. What did you want to discuss? The house payment, Mija. The bank says it's late. Did something happen with your transfer? I canceled the transfer, I replied. Since you've made it clear I'm not welcome at the house, I didn't see any reason to continue paying for it. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Emma, you can't just stop paying, my mother finally said. We depend on that money. You should have thought of that before you changed the locks and told me to stay away. That was just a misunderstanding, she stammered. Marcus thought he saw someone suspicious around the house, and we were just being cautious. Mom, I saw you meeting with lawyers. I know you're transferring the house to Marcus. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is about security. Another long silence. How did you? Who told you that? Nobody told me. I figured it out myself. I'm a financial analyst, remember? I can recognize a real estate transaction when I see one. My mother's voice became pleading. Emma, we can explain everything. Why don't you come over for dinner this Sunday and we'll talk about it as a family? Will I need the new gate code? I asked. Of course not. We'll give you the code. And will Marcus still be getting the house? The pause told me everything I needed to know. Emma, it's complicated. Marcus needs stability, and you're doing so well in your career, I see. So I should continue paying for a house that you're giving to Marcus because he needs stability, while I'm apparently stable enough to sacrifice my own financial goals indefinitely. That's not how we see it, my mother protested weakly. That's exactly how you see it, Mom. And it's exactly what you've been doing for the past 18 months. I ended the call and immediately blocked my parents' numbers. Then I blocked Marcus. I wasn't ready for the guilt trips and manipulation I knew would follow. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. For the first time since I'd started making those payments, I felt like I could breathe properly. The constant background stress of carrying everyone else's financial burdens lifted, replaced by a sense of freedom I'd forgotten was possible. The weekend, I did something I hadn't done in 18 months. I went shopping for myself, not for necessities, not for work clothes, but for things I wanted. I bought books, a nice bottle of wine, some plants for my small apartment. Small purchases, but they felt revolutionary after months of denying myself any non-essential spending. Ryan noticed the change immediately. You seem different, he said over dinner on Sunday. Lighter. I feel different, I admitted. I feel like myself again. I told him about the canceled payment, the family betrayal, and my decision to cut contact. He listened without judgment, occasionally reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I'm proud of you, he said when I finished. I know that couldn't have been easy. It was terrifying, I said, but also liberating. I spent so many years trying to earn their love and approval, and I finally realized it's not for sale. Or rather, it's for sale, but the price is my dignity and financial security. The next few weeks brought a parade of attempts at reconciliation, none of which addressed the underlying issues. Extended family members I barely knew called to lecture me about family obligations. My mother's sister sent a long email about forgiveness and family loyalty. Cousins posted passive-aggressive messages on social media about ungrateful children. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries. I had learned to recognize manipulation tactics thanks to some emergency therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Martinez, who helped me understand that my response was not only appropriate but psychologically healthy. What you're describing is a classic scapegoat golden child dynamic, Dr. Martinez explained during our third session. You were assigned the role of the responsible one who fixes everyone else's problems, while Marcus was allowed to remain irresponsible because you would always be there to pick up the slack. So, I enabled it, I said, feeling guilty. You survived it, she corrected. Children don't choose their family roles, but adults can choose to step out of them, which is exactly what you've done. Meanwhile, my parents were discovering the consequences of their calculated betrayal. Without my $3,500 monthly contribution, they couldn't afford the house payments. My father's part-time income and my mother's disability benefits weren't enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, and other expenses. Marcus, despite now being the legal owner of the house, couldn't qualify for a loan to refinance the existing mortgage. His income from his YouTube channel was negligible, and he had no employment history that would satisfy a lender. According to Jessica, who heard through the neighborhood grapevine, my parents had applied for loan modifications and second mortgages, but their debt-to-income ratio and age made them poor candidates for new financing. 6 weeks after I stopped the payments, the bank sent a default notice. 8 weeks after that, foreclosure proceedings began. The irony was delicious. In their attempt to secure Marcus's future by giving him the house, my parents had ensured that he would lose it instead. The desperate phone calls resumed, this time from numbers I didn't recognize. Family, friends, neighbors, even my old high school guidance counselor reached out, all with the same message. I needed to reconsider my decision for the good of the family. One call particularly stood out. It was from Father Miguel, the priest at my parents' church, whom I'd known since childhood. Emma, Mija, he said in his gentle voice, your parents are suffering. Isn't forgiveness part of being a good person? Father, I replied respectfully. Forgiveness doesn't require me to continue enabling harmful behavior. I forgive them for their choices, but I don't have to participate in the consequences. But they could lose their home, he pressed. They lost their home the moment they decided to transfer it to Marcus while expecting me to pay for it. They made their choice. Now they get to live with it. Even the priest couldn't argue with that logic. As the foreclosure process moved forward, my own life began to flourish in ways I hadn't expected. Without the burden of the monthly house payment, I was able to rebuild my savings quickly. I moved back into a one-bedroom apartment, joined a gym, and started taking the cooking classes I'd always wanted to try. More importantly, I began to rediscover who I was outside of my family role. I was funny, it turned out, with a dry sense of humor that my friends appreciated. I was creative, taking up watercolor painting as a hobby. I was social, making new friends through work and my cooking classes. Ryan and I grew closer as I became more confident and self-assured. I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time, he told me one evening as we walked through downtown Denver. The real you, not the person who was carrying everyone else's problems. 3 months after stopping the payments, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Marcus. The house is going into foreclosure. Are you happy now? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm not happy about the foreclosure. I'm happy that I'm no longer responsible for fixing problems I didn't create. His response came quickly. You're destroying the family. The family destroyed itself when you all decided I was valuable only for my money. I blocked that number too. The house sold at auction for months later. According to the real estate websites I occasionally checked, it went for significantly less than the remaining mortgage balance, meaning my parents would still owe money to the bank even after losing the property. The new owners were a young family with 2 small children. I drove by once and saw them playing in the front yard, hanging Christmas lights, turning the house into a home filled with love and laughter instead of manipulation and resentment. It should have made me sad, but instead, I felt relief. The house that had symbolized my family's dysfunction was now home to people who would presumably treat each other with kindness and respect. 6 months after the foreclosure, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." The message was longer than any communication I'd ever received from her, and for the first time, it seemed to acknowledge the real issues instead of trying to manipulate me into resuming my role as the family savior. Dear Emma, it began, I don't expect you to respond to this, but I need to say some things that have been weighing on my heart. Your father and I have had a lot of time to think about what happened, especially after losing the house. We've had to face some hard truths about how we treated you over the years. You were always the responsible one, the one we could count on to handle things when life got difficult. We took that for granted, and worse, we took advantage of it. We convinced ourselves that because you were capable and successful, you didn't need the same support and attention we gave Marcus. The truth is, we were scared for Marcus. He seemed so fragile, so unable to handle real life, that we kept protecting him from consequences. We see now that we weren't helping him. We were hurting him. And we were hurting you even more by making you carry burdens that weren't yours to carry. Transferring the house to Marcus while expecting you to pay for it was wrong. We knew it was wrong even as we were doing it, but we told ourselves we were helping the family. Really, we were just continuing the same pattern that started when you were children. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for money. We're managing in our apartment, and Marcus is finally working a real job now that he doesn't have the option of living in our basement. Maybe losing the house was what we all needed. I just wanted you to know that we see our mistakes now, and we're sorry. You deserved better parents than we were. Love, Mom. I read the email 3 times before showing it to Ryan. What do you think? I asked. I think it's a start, he said carefully. But starting over doesn't mean going back to the old dynamic. He was right. The email was encouraging, but one apology didn't erase 29 years of being treated as the family workhorse. If my parents wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than my usefulness to them. I drafted a response that took me several days to write. Mom, I replied, thank you for your email. I appreciate you acknowledging what happened and how it affected me. You're right that I deserved better, and I'm glad you can see that now. I'm not ready for a full reconciliation yet, but I'm open to rebuilding our relationship slowly with clear boundaries. If you'd like to meet for coffee sometime, just the two of us, I'd be willing to try. But I need you to understand that things can't go back to the way they were. I won't resume the role of family problem solver, and I won't tolerate being treated as less important than Marcus. I hope you understand. Emma, we met for coffee 2 weeks later at a neutral location downtown. My mother looked older, more fragile than I remembered, but also somehow more authentic. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually became more honest than any we'd ever had. She told me about the struggles of downsizing to a small apartment, about my father's difficulty finding steady work at his age, about Marcus's slow but genuine progress toward independence. She asked about my life, my work, my relationship with Ryan, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely interested in my answers rather than just waiting for her turn to talk about Marcus. I'm seeing a therapist, she admitted toward the end of our conversation. She's helping me understand how my own childhood affected the way I raised you and your brother. It doesn't excuse what we did, but it's helping me see the patterns. That's good, I said. I've been seeing someone too. It's been helpful. We agreed to meet again in a month, with the understanding that rebuilding our relationship would be a slow process with no guarantees. A year after I stopped making those house payments, my life has transformed in ways I never expected. I'm no longer the exhausted, resentful person who worked herself to death trying to earn love that was freely given to someone else. I'm confident, financially stable, and surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. Ryan and I moved in together 6 months ago, splitting expenses equally and making decisions as partners. We're talking about buying a house together, something I never thought I'd be able to afford while I was subsidizing my family's lifestyle. My relationship with my parents is slowly improving, though it will never be the same as before. We meet for coffee monthly, and the conversations are gradually becoming more natural. My father joined one of our meetings recently and actually apologized, something I never thought I'd hear from him. Marcus and I have exchanged a few text messages, mostly related to coordinating visits with our parents. He's working as a customer service representative at a tech company and seems to be slowly accepting adult responsibilities. I don't know if we'll ever be close, but the toxic dynamic that defined our childhood has finally been broken. The most surprising change has been in how I see myself. For years, I defined my worth through my usefulness to others, particularly my family. Now I understand that my value comes from who I am as a person, not what I can do for other people. I've learned to say no without guilt, to prioritize my own needs without feeling selfish, and to recognize manipulation before it can take root. These skills have improved not just my family relationships, but my friendships, my romantic relationship, and even my professional life. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that healthy relationships require reciprocity and respect. Love shouldn't come with the expectation of constant sacrifice, and family shouldn't be a one-way flow of resources from the responsible members to the irresponsible ones. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never found the courage to stop those payments. I'd probably still be working myself to exhaustion, postponing my own dreams to fund Marcus's basement lifestyle, accepting crumbs of approval in exchange for thousands of dollars in monthly support. The thought terrifies me more than the confrontation ever did. If you were in a similar situation, if you're the family member who always fixes everyone else's problems while your own needs go unmet, I want you to know that it's okay to step back. It's okay to prioritize your own well-being. It's okay to demand respect and reciprocity in your relationships. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your own stability and happiness for someone else's comfort. The decision to stop enabling my family's dysfunction was terrifying, but it was also the most liberating choice I've ever made. It taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who benefit most from keeping you small and compliant. Breaking free from that dynamic doesn't make you selfish or ungrateful. It makes you strong. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family loyalty and self-respect? How did you find the courage to put yourself first when everyone expected you to sacrifice for others? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about setting boundaries, recognizing manipulation, and reclaiming your worth. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that their value isn't determined by how much they sacrifice for others. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships that lift you up, not tear you down. You deserve love that doesn't come with a price tag, and you deserve to put yourself first sometimes. Your worth isn't measured by your usefulness to others, but by your willingness to honor your own needs and values. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. 2 years have passed since I made that life-changing decision to stop funding my family's dysfunction, and today I'm writing this update from the living room of the house Ryan and I just bought together. As I look around at our shared space filled with furniture we chose together, books we both love, and photos from trips we've taken, I'm struck by how different my life looks now compared to that desperate woman who used to work 60-hour weeks just to keep other people afloat. The house hunting process itself was a revelation. For the first time in my adult life, I was making a major financial decision based on what I actually wanted, not what I could afford after supporting everyone else. We found a charming 2-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood with a garden, where I've started growing vegetables, and a home office where I can work on the financial consulting business I launched 6 months ago. Yes, you heard that right, I finally took the leap into entrepreneurship. All those weekend hours I used to spend on freelance work to cover my parents' expenses gave me the skills and confidence to realize I could build something of my own. Rodriguez Financial Consulting now has 12 regular clients, and I'm booked solid through the end of the year. The irony isn't lost on me that the financial skills I developed while trying to solve my family's money problems became the foundation for my own independence. Ryan proposed 3 months ago, and planning our Wedding has been another exercise in healthy boundaries. When my mother suggested we invite the entire extended family, including relatives who had called to lecture me about abandoning the family during the house crisis, I calmly explained that our wedding would be small and intimate, limited to people who had supported us during difficult times. But what will people think? She asked, falling back into old patterns of worrying about appearances over authentic relationships. They'll think we know the difference between people who love us and people who judge us, I replied. The guest list stands at 42 people, each one someone who has shown up for us when it mattered. The absence of certain family members will be noticeable, but their presence would have been a distraction from celebrating the love Ryan and I have built together. Marcus and I have developed what I'd call a cordial sibling relationship. He's been working steadily for 18 months now and recently moved into his own apartment, a studio, but it's his. He sent me a text message on my birthday last month. Thanks for not giving up on the idea that I could grow up. I know I made it harder than it needed to be. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged his role in the family dynamic, and while it doesn't erase years of resentment, it feels like a foundation we can build on. My parents and I now have monthly coffee dates that have evolved into something resembling a normal adult relationship. My mother has continued therapy and has started volunteering at a community center, working with families in crisis. She tells me it's helped her understand how enabling behaviors often make problems worse instead of better. I see myself in some of these parents, she admitted during our last conversation. They think they're helping their children by removing consequences, but they're really preventing them from growing up. My father has been the slowest to change, but even he's made progress. He found full-time work as a project manager for a smaller construction company, and for the first time in years, he talks about his job with pride instead of frustration. He's also started taking Spanish classes, something he's always wanted to do but never had time for when he was running his own business into the ground. The most unexpected development has been my relationship with my late grandmother's memory. While going through old photo albums recently, I found a letter she'd written to me shortly before she died, which my mother had apparently forgotten to give me. In it, she wrote, "Mi querida Emma, I see so much strength in you, but I worry that your family sees only your usefulness. Remember that you are valuable for who you are, not what you can do for others. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. I learned this too late with my own children. Don't make my mistake." Reading those words felt like receiving permission from beyond the grave to prioritize my own well-being. My grandmother had seen the family dynamics more clearly than anyone, and she tried to prepare me for the difficult choices I'd eventually have to make. I've also been working with Dr. Martinez to understand why I stayed in that dysfunctional pattern for so long. We've traced it back to childhood messages about my worth being tied to my helpfulness, and we've worked on developing what she calls healthy selfishness, the ability to put my own needs first when necessary without feeling guilty about it. You've spent so many years being hyper-responsible for other people that normal self-care feels selfish to you, she explained. Learning to take care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. This lesson has transformed more than just my family relationships. At my old job, I used to volunteer for every difficult project, work through weekends without compensation, and say yes to responsibilities that weren't mine. I thought this made me valuable, but it actually made me a convenient target for other people's poor planning. Now, running my own business, I've learned to set clear boundaries with clients, charge what I'm worth, and maintain a work-life balance. That protects my mental health. Ironically, being less available has made me more respected, not less. Ryan has been my partner through all of this growth, never trying to rush my healing process or push me toward forgiveness before I was ready. He's shown me what it looks like to be loved for who I am rather than what I can provide, and he's created space for me to become the person I was meant to be before family dysfunction shaped my identity. You know what I love most about you? He told me recently as we were painting our bedroom. You're finally comfortable taking up space. You used to apologize for having opinions or needs. Now you just exist fully without making yourself smaller for other people's comfort. He was right. I no longer apologize for my success, minimize my achievements, or defer to other people's comfort at the expense of my own truth. I've learned that boundaries aren't mean they're necessary for healthy relationships. The wedding planning has reinforced these lessons. Every decision has been an opportunity to practice prioritizing our desires over other people's expectations. We're having a small ceremony in a botanical garden, followed by dinner at our favorite restaurant. No elaborate reception, no traditional elements that don't resonate with us, no compromises to please relatives who haven't earned a voice in our celebration. Some family members have expressed disappointment about the size and style of our wedding, but their reactions have become useful information about their priorities rather than sources of guilt for me. We wanted to celebrate with you. My aunt complained when she learned she wasn't invited. You can celebrate with us, I replied. Just not at our wedding. Looking ahead, Ryan and I are talking about starting a family in a few years, and I'm conscious of the generational patterns I want to break. I never want my children to feel like their worth depends on their usefulness to me, or that love in our family is conditional on meeting impossible standards. We're also planning to travel, something I never felt I could afford when I was supporting my parents. Next spring, we're taking a 2-week trip to Spain, my grandmother's homeland, to connect with that part of my heritage. It feels like completing a circle, honoring the woman who tried to teach me about self-worth even when her own children couldn't hear the message. My business is growing faster than I expected, and I'm considering hiring an assistant within the next year. There is something deeply satisfying about building something with my own skills and effort, knowing that every dollar I earn belongs to me and can be invested in my own future rather than someone else's dysfunction. The most profound change, though, has been internal. I wake up each morning knowing that my day belongs to me, that my energy will be spent on things I choose, and that my worth isn't determined by how much I sacrifice for other people's comfort. Sometimes I think about the version of myself who was working herself to death to pay for a house she wasn't allowed to enter, who measured her value by her ability to solve other people's problems. That woman feels like a stranger to me now, someone I remember with compassion but don't miss. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my old patterns, if you're the person everyone calls when they need help but who never receives support in return, if your family treats your sacrifices as expectations rather than gifts, if you've forgotten what it feels like to prioritize your own needs, I want you to know that change is possible. It won't be easy. The people who benefit from your overgiving will resist your boundaries. They'll try guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail to restore the old dynamic. Some relationships won't survive your growth, and that's painful, but necessary. But on the other side of that discomfort is a life that actually belongs to you. A life where your energy goes toward building your own dreams instead of funding other people's dysfunction. A life where you're loved for who you are, not what you can provide. You deserve that life. You deserve relationships that lift you up instead of draining you dry. You deserve to keep the money you earn and to make decisions based on your own values rather than other people's expectations. Most importantly, you deserve to discover who you are when you're not carrying everyone else's burdens. That person, the real you, freed from the role of family savior, is worth fighting for. The journey to self-respect isn't always linear, and healing happens in stages. But every boundary you set, every time you choose your own well-being over someone else's comfort, every moment you remember that your worth isn't determined by your usefulness, those are acts of revolution against a system that taught you to believe you mattered less than everyone else. You matter just as much. Your dreams are just as important. Your happiness is just as valuable. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, including the voice in your own head that was trained to put everyone else first. The woman who used to work 60-hour weeks to pay for a house she couldn't enter is writing this from her own living room, in a home she chose, surrounded by love she didn't have to earn through sacrifice. If I can build this life, so can you. Your future self is waiting for you to choose her. She's worth the difficult conversations, the boundary setting, and the temporary discomfort of disappointing people who've grown comfortable with your self-sacrifice. Choose her. Choose yourself. Choose the life that belongs to you. You won't regret it.